set from the atomic clock in Boulder, Colorado. If you don't respect the time. Welcome, everyone. My name's Chris Edkins. I'm a member of the Worship Committee, and I will be your worship associate today. And, of course, we are privileged to have a good, settled minister, the Reverend Carol Bodeau, who's going to be leading the service. So it's going to be a good day. Welcome to Westside Unitarian Universalist Church. We are a church where who you are and the values that you embody in your everyday life are more important than the specifics of what you believe. As Unitarian Universalists, we covenant to support and assist one another in our ministries. We draw from our heritages and freedom, reason, hope, and courage, building on the foundation of love. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. If you're with us in person today, we welcome you to our service. And if you are joining us out there on the internet, on YouTube, we also welcome you whether you are following along with the service today, this Sunday, or whether you are viewing this video sometime in the future. You are as much a part of our community as those who are with us today. So welcome. We have announcements in the order of service. If you'd care to take a look at those, or if you're joining us on the internet, those announcements will have been displayed. Are there any announcements we need to specifically draw attention to?
That's a really good question. Everything is. Just potluck. Just that it's potluck.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's the potluck today. We have a potluck on the first Sunday of every month. If you have not bought any food to share, don't worry. Please also stay. There's always plenty of food to share, and we would really welcome you to stay behind, have coffee, conversation, get to know us, and join us for some of that shared food. So having said that, if you want to settle into your seats, we will invite our singing bowl to sound as we come into the calm, centered, spiritual part of our service. We'll now light our chalice. Reverend Carol will light the chalice, and I have chalice lighting words for us. Today's chalice lighting is in the form of a meditation, a breath meditation. So I would invite you just to just take a breath in and just like sigh it out like this. Let's do another one. Now I'm going to read some words, and you can breathe in and listen to these words on the in-breath, and then there are words to go with the out-breath, like a little guided meditation. I breathe in the warmth of this light, its glow filling the spaces where fear and doubt reside. I breathe out the tension I carry, release what no longer serves me. I breathe in the strength of our community, a sanctuary of diverse voices and shared purpose. I breathe out the urge to go it alone. I embrace the power of togetherness. I breathe in the courage to speak truth, even when it trembles on my lips. I breathe out the silence that holds me back. I make space for honesty and justice. I breathe in the hope of transformation, knowing we are here to build and heal. I breathe out despair, trusting that change is born in small acts of love. As we light this chalice, may each breath remind us of the sacred rhythm of life, the pulse of creation, and the power we hold to shape the world around us.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's awesome to see you all this morning. I'm Reverend Carol Bodeau. I'm privileged to serve here as minister. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. So we're going to be doing a lot of breathing today. I'm going to invite Chris to light our community candles. And each week we light a couple of candles for things that are concerns in our larger world and things we celebrate in our larger world. The candle of concern today is for the Middle East, for all that is happening there, because that's a lot. And the candle of celebration is for the breath. So just take a moment. We just did a couple breaths. We're about to do a little singing about breath. The breath is really important. We celebrate our capacity to take a deep breath and become more centered. We celebrate the breath that allows us to show up, to be here, to be part of this crazy, maddening, miraculous, gorgeous, beautiful, troubled, amazing world. So let us today give thanks for the breath that allows us the possibility of something beautiful happening tomorrow. So we warned you a few weeks ago that there would be singing. And we're going to do a little singing exercise that is also breathing. If there are choir members who are willing to be brave and come up here, come stand with me. Chris, Linda, Judy, did I see you back there? Come on. Okay. Tremaine, awesome. Okay. So you two are going to lead the drone. And Judy and Alice and Linda are going to help with our melody. Now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to teach you two different parts of this song. Okay? We're going to teach you two parts. We're going to teach them separately. And then you're going to get to choose which one you want to do. Okay? So the first part is really easy. It just goes like this. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe. Come on, you can do it. Breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. Okay, that part's easy. Here's the slightly harder part. We'll sing it a few times. You join us, okay? When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love again. When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. So now what's going to happen is we're going to start the drone. Breathe in, breathe out. Join in. Breathe in, breathe. A couple more times. Breathe, sing louder. In, breathe out. One more time. Keep going. Breathe in. Now keep doing that. Breathe. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out. Keep going. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out. One more time. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. Good job. Give yourselves a round of applause for that. That was amazing. Notice how that steady breath, the awareness of the steady breath, creates a foundation for more complex movement and action. The breath is a foundational tool. So Brad, can you play us our song? This is a song y'all are gonna recognize. We're gonna talk about that steady center and how it helps us make choices about how we speak and act. So we're gonna play this song. Do we have lyrics, Brad? We have lyrics. You can sing along if you like. Some of you, many of you will know this song. We're gonna play the song. Feel free to sing along.
Hello, darkness, my
multiple layers of really important messages in it. So how many of us feel like words have lost their value in our modern society? Right? Or that they're quickly becoming hard to trust when we hear them? That the words you hear in those neon worlds, the internet, television, that those words have less and less connection to truth, to meaning, to value. Words are a really easy way to manipulate and move people's emotions, right? I don't know if this is true for you, but I know that for me, the inside of my head often feels like a bombardment of words that is painful and confusing and does not necessarily help me find truth or calm. Sometimes the spinning of the words, thoughts disconnected from one another, random fears, anxieties, memories, worries, things I saw on the television or heard on my podcast, or right? There are so many ideas and words and thoughts, but yet they aren't necessarily helping us feel connected to truth or one another. People talking without speaking, people saying that they're hearing but not really listening. That seems to me to be a really apt description of our time. I think they were warning us, right? Simon and Garfunkel were warning us. It's a very apt description of our time. Now, this song, when it was written in 1963, the Vietnam War was at the center of the American consciousness. That year, the Beatles released their first album, and civil rights activist Medgar Evers was murdered. This was the same year that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. wrote his letter from a Birmingham jail, and a few months later gave his I Have a Dream speech. The year that The Sound of Silence was written was also the year that President John F. Kennedy was assassinated, just a few weeks after the song was written. So a lot was going on when they wrote this song. For many people at that time, the world seemed to be falling apart, and meaning, particularly words of true deep meaning from leaders, felt elusive. There seemed to be a lot of shouting, but it was hard to find real speaking and listening. Anybody feeling that right now? Right? Paul Simon said that this song, which he wrote, was about people's inability to truly connect with one another, to love and really listen and share. Now, Art Garfunkel's college roommate, whose name was Sandy Greenberg, wrote a memoir later about Simon and Garfunkel. His memoir is about himself, but he talked a lot about them because he was friends with them. He said in his memoir that this song really expressed the kind of deep bond of connection the two musicians had, but also noted that they used the epithet darkness. Hello, darkness, my old friend. Darkness was a word they used to talk about close connections between them because Sandy Greenberg had been afflicted with a sudden onset of blindness. So he had been a sighted person who was suddenly made blind. So darkness was something the three of them shared, talking about what that meant. It was about how they connected with one another. They used that word to empathize with their friend. So the song has all these layers of personal and collective meaning, right? But it's really about how close we are willing to get to one another in joy and in pain. Are we willing to really hear and speak? Are we really willing to make deep connections? So I'd ask you to think for a second about what meaning you take from the song. This is a time when words are blasted at us from every angle. And we are not necessarily sure if they're true, if they have meaning, right? In the naked light I saw 10,000 people, maybe more, people speaking without, talking without speaking, hearing without listening, right? I feel like that's happening all around us all the time. So last week here at Westside, we talked about the importance of nonviolent communication, right? So we're following up on this theme of how do we communicate? I am guessing that everyone sitting in this room has a whole bunch of thoughts and feelings and concerns and worries and ideas that you desperately want to communicate and share with other people, like to truly connect. But how do we do that most effectively in a way that really has power? Last week I commented that while compassionate communication is an essential tool in a society where we're able to do that kind of effective communication, it's not necessarily the right tool for every single situation. When we talk about nonviolent or compassionate communication, where we say, I'll summarize it for those of you who didn't hear it last week, when fill in the blank X happened, I felt fill in the blank because I need or care about something. So when you slammed the door, I felt shocked, angry, upset, because I really need some calm and peace in my home right now when the world is so crazy, right? So there are these methods of communication we can learn, that's one of them, to try to figure out how to make sense of our world and share that with each other in ways that are productive. But not every tool works for every situation. Right? There are different tools that work for different situations. There are times when the person we are speaking with is not someone with whom it is appropriate to share our deepest feelings and needs. Right? I remember when I first started talking about nonviolent or compassionate communication here at Westside. We were talking earlier today about some of the history of this congregation, and many of you know that this is a congregation, along with the Tennessee Valley UU congregation, that a number of years ago lost members in a church shooting. It was really the first big nationally publicized church shooting in the U.S. in our recent era. And there was a shooting at Tennessee Valley where members of that congregation and members of this congregation who were there for that service were killed and others injured. And the first time I talked about nonviolent communication, one of our very wise members said to me, if somebody walks up with a gun and is going to shoot you in your church service, you're not going to say, you know, when I see that gun, I feel disturbed. Right? And you're probably not going to do it at the grocery store. When you show up at the grocery store and they don't have what you want, you're not going to say to the cashier, you know, sometimes the cashier says, did you find everything? You're not going to say, you know, when I didn't find chocolate milk, I felt really sad. Because it really is one of my most important childhood reminders. Could you please make sure to have it on hand for me so that I feel emotionally having my needs met? Right? So communication choices are really important. There are awesome tools out there, but we often don't stop and think, what choice do I want to make about my communication, right? We have a tendency to think that once we've mastered certain communication techniques. So let's start with persuasive speaking. Anybody been trained in persuasive speaking? Did you go to a public school in the United States? If you did, you have been trained in persuasive thinking. You have been trained to say, my thesis is, my 3 supporting points are, let me restate my thesis. How many of us think that that is the primary way we should communicate all the time? I can tell you, being a person who communicates with a lot of people, that is how we live our lives to a large extent in this country. My point is this, and here are the 3 reasons you should believe my point, and let me just say again, this is my point. Right? Active listening is another model, right? Active listening is another model. Nonviolent or compassionate communication, it's another model. These are models or tools, but we don't often stop and ask the question, what tool do I need in this situation? we fall back into the patterns. But here's some important questions that I think this song helps us ask. When do we choose to communicate? And when do we choose to be silent? And why in those situations? What is happening right now that I'm choosing to communicate versus somebody else not communicating? How often do our choices about when and how we communicate really reflect a deep and conscious awareness of what is the best thing for all concerned in our communication? This morning in our spiritual practices, we talked about how important it is to notice what's happening in your body before you take action. How important it is to stop and ask the question, what am I feeling? Am I being reactive? Am I not being reactive? What's happening? How often do we just avoid communication or communicate without stopping and asking, why am I doing this? So the song Sound of Silence reflects on the dangers of talking without speaking or claiming to be hearing without listening. So what does that mean? Let's reflect on that for a minute. Do I do that? Do I ever talk at people rather than with them? I'm just going to say yes, right? Do I ever claim to be listening when what I'm really doing is preparing my next statement? My counter argument? If you took high school English in the United States, you are doing that, right? You already, the second someone has a counter response to your comment, you already are calculating your counter argument, right? Do I ever do that? Yeah. I will be first to admit that there are times, try as I might to not do it, that I am talking to hear my own voice, because I feel invisible. I'm talking to force an emotional state on another person because I want them to be some place, some way, something that they're not. I'm talking to change my own emotional state because it's so uncomfortable to just sit with it. So I am forcing other people to participate in my emotional state with me. Or maybe I'm just simply trying to shore up my own feeling of low self-esteem, fear, confusion. And if I talk and prove how smart I am and can come up with a good argument, then I'll feel better. Does this make sense to anybody? Anybody had any of these experiences? Very human. And I would say that this kind of communication, talking without speaking, which usually goes right along with claiming to be hearing but not actually listening, that those are both very common and not very helpful. They're just not very helpful. Now, equally unhealthy, the song points out a kind of non-communication that is equally toxic and dangerous, right? It's equally detrimental to our sense of well-being and connection when silence is poison. This is the silence of checking out, of avoiding, of being silent when someone, hear the singers, try to reach out with authentic words or authentic communication. How many times have we silently kind of turned and changed the subject or walked away when someone said something vulnerable and we didn't know how to respond? When authentic communications are met with the sound of silence, that's often because we don't know what to do and we're scared to be vulnerable ourselves. We're scared to share another person's pain. We would prefer often to bow out and just put our attention on those neon gods. How many times have each of us turned on the television or scrolled the internet instead of making direct contact with the others in our lives? Because we knew there was pain there. How many times have we done that to avoid the world, the earth, other creatures that are right outside our doors? Because we didn't know how to manage the discomfort, right? Right now, there is a profound attraction to remaining silent or shouting, right? There's a fight-flight response that's very active for us. There's this desire to kind of cuddle back into this. I will just speak for myself, okay? Cuddle back into the safety of audiobooks. Binging Outlander on Netflix, right? Bridgerton, the new Bridgerton series is out. I'm just saying, for anybody who's a Bridgerton fan, it's happening. And there are times for that. There are times when that's appropriate. But do we ask ourselves the question, is this the time? We all need rest from the constant secondary or sometimes primary trauma of our world, right? We live in a world right now where all you have to do is get the tiniest little bit of messaging from anywhere, and we're experiencing secondary trauma. These neon gods have made the traumas, the primary traumas of other people, very available to us in video, in audio, right? In instant time. We see the bombs. We see the destruction. We see the person on the street. We see it. We experience it with them. So we all need rest from that. And speaking reactively about things, engaging in shouting matches, not really sharing communication, that's not helpful. So what is the balance between silence and not silence? When do we communicate and when do we not communicate? How do we know when pulling back and being silent is a good thing and when it's detrimental? How do we know if the way we're communicating is serving the highest good of all, or just feeding into that cacophony of anger and fear that is permeating our society? It is so easy to do this unconsciously. I love that this song starts in a kind of positive silence, okay? Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again, because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping, and the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence. So as the song opens, we have this kind of dark, rich silence that is fertile and produces visions and clarity and a sense of understanding that one wants to share. And then the song goes on to present us with this example of positive communication. Don't you think the song does a good job of sharing that vision in a way that is truly speaking? Like that song actually hits our hearts. It speaks to us. And it does so sharing examples of not healthy communicating, right? So it's this wonderful balance. The silence of quiet receptivity at the beginning opens our minds and hearts to a vision, and the artist is able to share, to speak that vision in a way that reverberates in our minds and hearts. It reminds us what not to do when we're communicating. So there is a healing speaking, and there's a healing silence. And there are poisonous ways to speak and poisonous ways to be silent. So how do we make those choices? How do we make those choices mindfully? How do we make them consciously? I will tell you that we talk a lot about these kinds of things in our spiritual practices, and we say that part of the point of doing spiritual practices is to get in our centers so that we can make our choices more mindfully, so that I'm less reactive, so that when I speak or take an action, I'm doing it from a conscious, centered choice point. So here are some steps that I was thinking about that are ways we can cultivate making really good choices about when to communicate, when to be still, when to settle back into that moment of needing to reflect to sit in the darkness or the silence and receive information, and when to then come out of it and choose to speak. So first, when I have the impulse to speak, which I do often, it's a requirement of the job, I have to stop and ask myself, why? Why do I want to speak? What is the purpose of me wanting to communicate in this situation? And answering that question honestly, now the first layer is going to be because they need to know the truth, because whatever, right? They need to be straightened out, right? Because I don't like it, and I have a right to express my feelings, which is true. But often we choose a version of communication that I just need to express my feelings, but the method of communication I choose is not me expressing my feelings, it's me telling you you're wrong. So I got to make a conscious choice, which often requires me to ask another question. How am I feeling right now? When I want to assess my purpose in communication, I often first have to assess my emotional state. Am I angry right now? Am I upset? Am I wanting to get my own way or make a point? Or am I sincerely wanting to share a communication? Is my motivation one-directional or two-directional? Right? Am I as ready to listen as I am to speak? Now, these questions apply when I'm not speaking too, when I'm avoiding speaking. Am I feeling fear right now? Am I too afraid to share in this communication? Am I too afraid to say what's true for me? Am I so afraid of the other person's reaction that I'm not willing to speak my truth? Am I avoiding conflict or avoiding connection because connection is scary? Am I being silent when someone else shares with me because I just don't want to go there? That feels too prickly or soft or tender or dangerous to me. What is motivating my words? What is motivating my silence? Ultimately, this question to me seems to be the most pertinent one. What is motivating my speaking, or my hearing, or my silence? There are very, very good reasons to speak. There are very, very good reasons to listen. There are very, very good reasons to remain silent. But we don't generally, I think, take the time to stop and get honest with ourselves about what's happening, and we make those choices unconsciously. I would hazard a guess to say that we are mostly unconsciously moved by deep habits, conditioning, reactive patterns, rather than by mindful choices when it comes to the ways we communicate. After all, when did we learn to communicate? When we were 2. When we were 3. When we were 5. Right? And then those messages get reinforced as we get older and older and older. So we have these deeply embodied and ingrained habits of communication. How many of you have ever traveled outside your home state? Okay, how many of you have ever traveled outside your home country? Anybody notice that the communication patterns are profoundly different? Anybody ever been annoyed because of the way somebody from a different culture communicates? Like, it just rubs you the wrong way because you're like, you have it in your body. This is the way you're supposed to do that. You don't say those things. If you grew up in a home where you never talk about money and somebody brings up their salary at a dinner party, you're going to have a reaction, right? These habits of what we communicate about, how we're allowed to communicate, communication. You walk up to someone you haven't seen in a week, and you say to them, "How are you doing?" And they say, "You know what? I need to talk about this. Please come talk with me about this. I have had a really hard week. Here's everything that's happening in my life." Were you expecting that? Probably not. Maybe you've built relationships where that's the case. But frequently, we have real assumptions about what communication is going to happen. So what is motivating me? Like, actually being mindfully conscious of that is really important. As I meditate, so partly meditation helps me get there, right? Some people it's walking, some people it's gardening, some people it's watching their favorite TV show. Whatever it is that helps you get in that place where you're like, yeah, I can be really self-aware right now for a minute. For me, that's meditation. When I try to meditate, I often find my brain barraged with an onslaught of unwelcome communication. Anybody ever had that experience? Right? Words, memories, worries, random to-dos from my to-do list, a never-ending parade of thoughts and images and phrases, monologues that I'm ready to deliver. Anybody ever gotten in your car to drive somewhere and like 20 minutes later you realize you have just gone, you don't know how you got where you are because you've just gone down that train of like, I've just given 4 sermons. Even you maybe give 4 sermons while you're driving and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm already there, what happened, right? These barrages of words are not just external, they're internal. And frequently, I realize that I want to open my mouth and spew that stuff out, right? Someone says, "How are you?" And if I haven't talked to somebody in a while, I just want to be like, all the things, which maybe wasn't what they were asking, right? So, if I choose to meditate or become mindful, that's my way of becoming mindful, right? What's motivating me? I might realize that I'm feeling really anxious, that I have a lot of anxiety or anger or fear or worry, sadness, grief. I might have all kinds of things going on inside of me. That then, if I don't pay attention to that, all that might make my decision for me about how I communicate. Mindfulness, in whatever form, requires me to stop and consciously become aware of what my head and my heart are doing, and to put me in the driver's seat of choosing what my mouth and my hands are going to do in the world, right? It's not that I will ever be able to stop that barrage of words and thoughts and memories. That's what the brain does. The mind does that. It is a wonderful tool, giving us access to all of this stuff. It's the nature of mind to eternally spin and speculate and churn out material. And in some cultures, and I would say that Unitarian Universalism is one of those cultures, we really value the contents of the mind. So often, if something goes through our mind, we think, therefore, it is absolutely valuable enough to say out loud. Right? Like, do you feel that? We really think our thoughts are really important. And they are. But maybe we need to become a little more self-aware about what we do with that stream of thoughts. What would it mean for you to choose your communications, including your silences, consciously? What would that mean? What would it mean to use the limited energy you have available to you each day in your relationships, in your work, in the world? What would it mean to use the energy to its absolute most effective ends? Could we cultivate a kind of deep discipline to become aware of what motivates us before we say the words or take the action? It's a good challenge for us to consider. How many of us, you do not have to raise your hands, but you feel free to, because I think there's some emotions about this. How many of you are angry and upset about the words? Now, maybe it gave you a moment of relief, right? Maybe it gave you a moment of relief. Not bad, could be. There are moments when it's perfectly appropriate to say, I am choosing to use my energy to spew out every cuss word I can think of right now, because then I will feel better. But there are also moments, anybody had the experience of doing that and feeling worse? And spinning longer? And getting sucked into the cycle because you wanted to change somebody's behavior or somebody's thinking, and that did not accomplish that goal? How many of us have stood in the shower and lectured someone who blithely went about their life doing exactly what you don't want them to do, and you had a rotten shower as a result of it? Right? So, our words matter. Our silences matter. These are the ways we use our energy to impact our world. Let us make some conscious choices about how we do that, right? Our still, quiet moments, used mindfully, can be fuel for words that are actually powerful. Moments of silence when we allow it to fill us with clarity and self-awareness and a deep sense of what is true for us, those kinds of moments of silence, like Simon and Garfunkel being inspired with the song, those moments can then give us fuel to speak in ways that are authentic, directed appropriately, in the appropriate situation where they will have the most impact. Those moments of silence like that will also give us the reserves to be good listeners. To be able to be still and hear when someone is telling us something that it is hard to hear. We will be able to cultivate that kind of patience and just listening and not needing to react, but just showing up that other person might need. So I would invite you to think about this week how you can be mindful about what motivates your communication. We're going to have potluck. Talking happens at potluck, right? How many of you can think of a moment at potluck when you have communicated in a way that was just not that authentic? Probably everybody, right? And some of us really cultivate that authenticity. But potluck is a great experiment, right? Think about our silences. Think about the ways we speak. Think about the script that you're used to using. And maybe instead, take a breath and ask yourself, what do I really... And here we cultivate showing up authentically, sharing authentically. We do a lot of things. We do a lot of actions that grow out of that. So this is the part where we talk about justice and generosity, right? Every quarter, we cultivate a relationship with an organization in our community. That's why we call them our partners. We cultivate a relationship with a community partner to build a deep connection where they can share with us what their needs are, we can share with them what our resources are, we can be supportive of them in a real way. This quarter, we are supporting the bottom And next week, Ty Murray, the art director for the Bottom, will be speaking here, sharing about the great work of that organization. So I want to encourage you to show up for that. Show up as good listeners to hear what they're doing, right? Now, I also want to let you know about an opportunity today at Potluck. So, how many of you you don't have to raise your hand for this, but many people come here and they think that once they get a name tag, they're a member. People tell me that all the time. Oh, I have a name tag. I thought I was a member. That's not actually what happens, but we don't talk about it very much, and we haven't. It's been a while since we talked about what does it actually mean to join the church, right? So today during Potluck, anybody who wants to learn about that, who has not yet joined, we're going to have a small group discussion down the hall in the conference room. You can get your food and come down the hallway and sit in that small group discussion. And we're going to talk about it. But let me give you a little bit of information. We have so many new people here. I just want to shout out to all the new people here, right? It is awesome to look at this community and see how many people have only been here for a few months, a few weeks, maybe a year. That's amazing. This congregation, yes?
Can we?
Yes, ask the question.
Because I have no idea who's there. Can you raise your hand if we're new?
Sure, raise your hand if you think of yourself as a new person. Isn't that awesome? Isn't that awesome? That is awesome. So this congregation is growing and evolving and changing. So it's a really great opportunity to learn about each other. So here, let me just give you a quick summary of what it means when you join Westside. First, you don't have to join Westside. The cool thing about Unitarian Universalism is that we tend to be a people who have some anti-institutional inclinations, right? So a lot of people don't ever actually join Westside. They become what we refer to as friends. So when I fill out the annual report to the denomination, the Unitarian Universalist Association, they actually ask me, how many actual members do you have? And I write that number down. And they say, how many participating active friends do you have? And then I have to do the math in my head, like, right? And think through people. But there are people who have been founding, central, pivotal people in the life of this congregation over its 30-some years who never joined. We've had central people to this congregation who are on the boards of other Jewish temples, who are active participants in other spiritual communities, and yet we're also foundational and central to Westside, right? So you don't have to join. However, you don't get to vote if you don't join. So that's one thing that's just in our bylaws, which is why we're bringing it up now. You can be an active participant in the life of the congregation, but if you want to have a voice in our polity, you have to formally join the congregation. That process is pretty simple. Step one, show up for a while. People who show up and try to join after just a few weeks, especially people who've never been part of a UU congregation, typically end up not sticking around, right? So we ask that you stick around for a little while, that you have a conversation with us. Somebody, me, someone who's doing membership stuff, the board president, have a conversation. We ask that you sign the book, which is cool, right? I will tell you, as a historian of Unitarian Universalism, I just finished a book project in which I was working with the membership book of a Universalist church that was founded in 1854. And I was able to go through that membership book and look at the narrative of the life of that congregation for 170 years, right? So you sign the book, and then you contribute to the community. We ask that people make some kind of financial contribution. Doesn't have to be huge. It's whatever is true for you. And that also you participate in the life of the congregation. that you meet people, that you participate in activities, that you, when you're able, share your gifts and talents. Help us, because we're building this together. So today, if you are one of those people who wants to learn about that, sit and chat with us, that would be great. Get your food when the food is ready. Come back to the conference room. There's plenty of seats. Yes, Judy?
I put besides when you become a member, besides being able to vote, you also can run for office and hold an office. If you're not a member, you're never going to be president.
That's right. That's right. I will tell you that we have had people who were participating friends for long periods of time and agreed to be president and signed the book before the congregational meeting where we voted, right? But yes, if you want to hold office, you need to be a member. So I'm going to give you the dates of our 2 upcoming congregational meetings. We are moving into that season. Judy speaks from being the person who keeps our nominating committee going, right? Finding people to hold positions. So we have 2 upcoming congregational meetings. The first is on Sunday, March 22nd. That's the first of our 2 meetings. You have to be a member for 6 weeks before you can vote, so it's too close to vote at that meeting. But that's the first meeting where we present to you the proposed budget for the church. And then between that meeting and the May meeting, we actually invite people to make their pledges for next year, so we can figure out whether or not we can afford the budget that we've suggested, right? So our second congregational meeting is on May 31st. You're going to get lots of information about this coming to you in your e-news and things like that. There's a meeting at the end of March. There's a meeting at the end of May. At the end of May, we approve our budget for the coming year. If there are any bylaws changes to the bylaws of the institution, they will be voted on in May. So if you are someone who's been here and been participating and you want to be able to vote in that May meeting, it's probably important that you come to this conversation today and think about signing the book relatively soon so that you're able to vote, okay? And if you have questions about any of that, and also I would just like to say that if you've been here for 40 years, because we're almost 40 years, if you've been here a long time and you want to come hang out with the new people at Potluck, please do so. If you're someone who's been a member for a while and you want to come hang out and chat, please do that, because we all need to get to know each other. Okay, that was a lot of logistics. I had to communicate that part. Right? So think about what kinds of ways you expect to give and receive information. What kinds of ways you expect to give and receive connection. What kinds of ways you expect to be in relationship through your words and your actions. And I invite us during the coming week to be people who think about what's motivating us and choose wisely to use our energy in the most effective ways, putting the most power and meaning and value behind what we say and do. May that be so. All right, this is the part where you get to hold hands if you want to. Choose what motivates you. Some people hold hands because they feel like they don't have a choice. If that's you, don't do it. Good job. So, let me pull my microphone cord. Think about what motivates you. Hold your own hands. If you want to hold your own hands, hold your own hands. You can be motivated by self-preservation during flu season. It is okay. 100% okay. Right? And you can be motivated by an impulse to have physical contact with other humans. Right? I'm going to do the thing that I sometimes make you do. Look around. Look at other people. Look in other people's eyes. We did it last week. It makes you squirm. But it's good for you. Make contact. Make contact with each other. A single, deeply felt, true look into another person's eyes in silence is worth more than 1,000 words when you do it with your heart. So today, communicate from your hearts in whatever way is true for you. Go in peace, go in passion, and please join us for potluck. Thank you.